Ultimate culture. Sir Edward B. Tyler, well-known anthropologist, has defined culture as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. The word culture thus refers to the cumulative deposit of knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, roles, spatial relations, concepts of the universe, and material objects and possessions acquired by a group of people in the course of generations through individual and group striving. It is the way of life for an entire society, the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that are accepted and passed along by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. As such, it includes codes of manners, dress, language, religion, rituals, games, laws, as well as the art. The growth of culture of a specific group of people at a given point in time and location is based on various natural/environmental parameters. Culture of a society gives importance to the life practices and rituals pertaining to birth, death, marriage, pregnancy, work, division of labor, etc. These practices and rituals are an offshoot of values which form the core of any culture and are symbolic of respect for the human life. The values, commonly known as cultural values, emerge from the culture of a society and are broad tendencies for preferences of a certain state of affair over the others. Good, evil, right, wrong, and natural, unnatural. Values cannot always be discussed or observed directly by others because they remain unconscious to those who hold them. Therefore, values can only be inferred from the way people act under different circumstances. This is the essence of culture. Culture of a society is derived from nature's inherent tendency to nurture, protect, and care. Hence, culture is an assimilation of positive, life-giving values, even though its absorption, interpretation, and dissemination may sometimes be negative and lead to negative actions by some individuals. Culture is not a one-man show created by a powerful chief or monarch for mankind to follow. Each aspect of culture has its origin in nature, and it has evolved over a long period of time through man's observation of nature and the understanding of his linkages within the universe. Nature's cycle nurtures and protects life on Earth. The winds of nature act like its culture, and the various seasons represent its life cycle. Nature's culture gives rise to seasons that are so vital for existence of life. All seasons exist on Earth at any given point of time in a harmonious balance. Similarly, different cultures exist in various societies depending on parameters like time, geographical location, social stratification, personal relationships, etc. Cultural flowing through the societies nurture, sustain, and give a meaning to human life. Culture is like a stream flowing down through the centuries, from one generation to the other. Each generation contributes something to this stream, but in each generation something is also left behind. Some sediment drops at the bottom, which are lost to the society. Like a river, It runs through humanity and blends with every aspect of life, from dawn to dusk and from birth to rebirth. It may also, like a river, diverge and bifurcate to form new cultures based on new analysis, interpretations, social requirements, etc. When culture splits into sections, it becomes a sect of that culture, that is, a smaller religious or political group that has broken off from a larger group, usually due to a disagreement on doctrinal matters, even though it may retain some of the beliefs and practices of the culture that they have broken off from. However, when culture is imprisoned with rigidity, it becomes a cult, with its negative connotation of new religious, extreme political, questionable therapeutic, and pyramidal business groups. Culture is an important task to be performed, and not a thought to be contemplated and analyzed in vacant space. When one stands still on the banks of the river, at some stage one stops seeing the river and becomes oblivious of its flow. Similarly, an individual busy in his day-to-day life becomes oblivious of the flow of culture, the flow of life and its cycle of birth and death, the cultural values and beliefs, as well as the thought processes inherent and embedded in the people. It is at this stage that the individual gets lost in the snapshot details of the rituals and ceremonies, without grasping the underlying reasons and importance for the rituals and practices being followed. The rituals and practices then become meaningless and just a reason for a social gathering and celebration. Hence, culture needs to become embedded in the psyche of every individual and should flow from within him and reflect in his day-to-day life. Only then can culture survive meaningfully and enrich a society. The cultural tree. A tree represents growth, and is an apt symbol for understanding the various aspects of culture. In this representation of culture as a tree, known as the cultural tree, human beings can be seen as the substratum, and the culture of the particular time acts as the seed and the root. Values, tradition, religion, behavior, rituals, and practices are the fruits of this tree. As you sow, so shall you reap. If the seed of the tree is good and healthy, and the seed is nourished and nurtured in a healthy way, it will grow into a healthy tree, fruit-bearing tree, which will benefit mankind. But if a poisonous tree is planted, the tree cannot be expected to bear sweet fruit, nor can it have any other benefit. Similarly, culture, being the seed, is responsible for the physical, psychological, and social well-being of all individuals who are a part of the cultural tree. If the seeds of the cultural tree are positive and are nurtured with positivity, it will certainly bear fruits in the form of positive values, which will benefit generations to come. If the seeds of the cultural tree are negative and the tree is grown in an hostile environment, it will only breed negativity all around, which will be harmful for the society. Physical dimension of culture. The physical aspects of a culture make the stem of a cultural tree. Just as the plant kingdom of a rainforest is different from that of a desert or the mountains, and a plant belonging to one or the other can be recognized by its stem, the cultural background of an individual can be identified, to a large extent, by looking at and interacting with him. The stems of the cultural tree spread out into various branches that denote the various aspects of culture, namely tradition, religion, values, beliefs, rituals, ceremonies, etc. Each branch represents one aspect of the culture. Also within a culture, there may be cultural diversity represented by cults and sects, which are represented by a branch springing from within a branch. The branches terminate in small stems and leaves that represent the individuals of that group. Flowers appear when the time is right, leading to fruits and seeds. Just as a flower may be cross-pollinated to create a new flower, two cultures can merge to create a new cultural order. For example, a marriage between two individuals belonging to and following separate cultures results in genetic exchange as well as transfer of culture to the offspring, which results in the new breed. The seeds can germinate thereby giving continuity to culture. With time, various cultures mix at the pollination stage, creating hybrids. However, it is necessary to ensure that these hybrids are able to retain and build on the positive values of the parent culture and keep out any unconstructive practices, beliefs, and values from seeping into the new culture.
Psychological dimension of culture. The psychological characteristics of the culture are the nutrients that travel through the root and stem, which nourish the cultural tree. Psychology pertains to thought, emotion, and its resultant human behavior. Just as the branches of a tree may give rise to offshoots, which, as seen in a banyan tree, extends with time to take firm root in the ground, the major and minor traits of a culture may give rise to firm roots, which help to draw nutrients from the psychological characteristics of the culture to grow bigger and stronger and spread over a larger territory. Proper channelization of the thought forces of a culture results in appropriate action. The output of each individual belonging to a culture depends on the nutrition provided to him by the cultural thought forces and the cultural value system. Fungus or infection of any kind in the roots can destroy a whole tree. Similarly, negative thoughts at the level of cultural roots can result in cultural decay, which will negatively affect all individuals associated with that culture. Hence, it is vital for the survival of the cultural tree that the psychological characteristics of the cultural roots and the thought forces stemming from these roots are always positive. The nutrients in the form of positive thought forces will ensure a blooming cultural tree with beautiful flowers, nourishing fruits, and healthy seeds, which when sown, will lead to a physically and psychologically strong and positive next generation. Social dimension of culture. Different layers of culture exist at various levels of society, namely, the national level, cultural values associated with the feeling of belonging to a nation; regional level, cultural values associated with ethnic, linguistic, or religious differences that exist within a nation; gender level, cultural values associated with gender differences, man versus woman; generation level, cultural values associated with differences between grandparents, parents, and children; social class level, cultural values associated educational opportunities and differences due to social stratification; and corporate level, values associated with the culture of an organization. The cultural roots bind individuals at various layers, and the cultural tree contributes at all these levels in a society. It is the fruits of a vigorous cultural tree with strong values, which the society is enjoying today in the form of various discoveries and inventions. The cultural orientation of a society reflects the complex interaction of the values, attitudes, and behaviors displayed by its members. Individuals express culture and its normative qualities through the values that they hold about life and the world around them. These values, in turn, affect their attitudes about the form of behavior considered more appropriate and effective in any given situation. The continually changing patterns of individual and group behavior eventually influence the society's culture, and the cycle begins again.
Importance of culture. Culture is what differentiates humans from other organisms. While non-humans automatically follow a fixed pattern of life, humans are endowed with the ability to think, analyze, discriminate, and select their actions and behavior. Cultural values guide individuals to think, analyze, discriminate, and select their actions and behavior positively and effectively. If an individual's actions are not rooted in cultural values, he is bound to produce negativity around him and act negatively due to incorrect analysis of the situation he is faced with. Adopting positive cultural values leads to rapid development, of which the newly elected U.S. President Barack Obama is a good example, while negative culture or misinterpretation of cultural thoughts lead an individual to indulge in inhuman, antisocial, and criminal acts like rape, terrorism, etc. It is a well-known fact that any disturbance to the nature's cycles results in occurrences like cyclones, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc., which destroy human life. Similarly, any dent in culture and the cultural values leads to an imbalance in human life, resulting in chronic physical diseases and severe psychological disturbances. Hence, it is essential to immediately identify and deal with any cultural imbalance that exists in a society. The concepts of culture and society are closely related. Culture is defined as all the products of society, material and non-material. Society consists of interacting people living in the same territory who share a common culture. We cannot have one without the other. People in a society create its culture. Culture shapes the way people interact and understand the world around them. Culture is like a flowing river that nourishes every moment and every aspect of human life. It has many branches, dimensions or facets, which include religion, ceremonies, traditions and traditional practices, beliefs and values, with their logic and thought processes. Art, in all its forms, literature and other cultural outputs help to maintain culture over periods of time by stirring the right thought at the right time and place. Culture is not and should not be stagnant or rigid, otherwise it can become regressive and hamper the growth of society and the individual within it. In fact, culture should be able to incorporate the events presented by time and be able to correctly interpret these events and create important value systems out of them, for the benefit of the future generations. Culture is critical to the survival of human race because it enables us to survive as a species. It plays a crucial role in making an individual a complete personality by influencing the individual's physical, psychological, and social dimensions. Culture is the foundation on which an individual builds his life, both personally and socially. It keeps individuals organized socially and provides us with values that are instrumental in the formation of human attitudes and behavior. Values develop over a period of time and become part of a culture. The values represent basic convictions that a specific conduct or state of existence is personally or socially preferable to an opposite conduct or state of existence. There's an inherent judgmental element in the value system in that it carries an individual's ideas as to what is right, good, or desirable. Values influence an individual's selection of modes, means, and ends of action. Values are transmitted into the psychological dimension of an individual by parents, teachers, friends, and others. Values are relatively stable and enduring because there are no gray areas in their transmittance to an individual. Values act as the internal guideposts for individuals for making the right choices in the event of any conflicts. Making value choices is never easy, but an individual must confront the dilemma and make the choices if he is to be a complete personality. Much of the great literature of the world, from Bhagavad Gita to Socrates to Hamlet, dwells on the dilemma in making the right choice in the backdrop of a value system. Sometimes, these conflicts are considered as a waste of time, a domain for losers, or an excuse. It is not realized that value conflicts and dilemmas are possible only for those who hold strong principles, and it is through these conflicts within an individual that new and revolutionary thought processes emerge and a character develops. Value conflicts are the strongest test of character. These are healthy and necessary for every individual because it is only by eliminating these conflicts that all conviction can be reached. Confucius once said, "If a man carefully cultivates values in his conduct, he may still err a little, but he won't be far from the standard of truth." Hence, it is easier for an individual to arrive at the right choice in the event of a moral or value conflict if he is deeply rooted in the cultural values and is able to positively analyze, interpret, and implement these values in his thought processes. Culture influences the physical dimension of an individual by providing the values pertaining to maintaining good health, personal hygiene, decent and elegant dress sense, etc. Similarly, culture plays a very important role in stabilizing the psychological dimension of an individual. When the culture is practiced strongly with its various values, it acts to stabilize the psychological layer of the individuals by making them mentally strong, by acting as a protective buffer at times of mental turmoil, by giving the ability to recognize negative influences and not getting affected by them, and by guiding them to take the right course of action by looking beyond immediate gains. A cultured individual is recognized by his mannerisms, behavioral patterns, social conduct, body language, and dress sense. No culture teaches or appreciates an individual with uncouth behavior, shabby or vulgar dress, unkempt hair, etc. In other words, when an individual exhibits a cultured demeanor, it makes him socially acceptable and respected and gives a social dimension to his personality. Thus, an individual rooted in cultural values is able to grow into a complete personality by attending to the physical, psychological, and social dimensions of his existence.
Human culture and ultimate culture. What is the objective of any culture? Why do Asian cultures have very strong and binding value and belief systems? Why does the African culture believe that the new child is coming from the spirit world to accomplish a mission? Cultural values and beliefs guide an individual through their life cycle by assisting him to make the right, life-enhancing choices and by providing the stimulus for an overall growth, both individually and socially. For example, the belief that the child has come into this world with a purpose acts as a stimulus for the mother and society to assist the child to realize that purpose during his life cycle and provide a platform for the growth of a child into a complete personality. Culture and its value system creates the environment necessary for an individual to become a complete personality, a personality with a balanced physical, psychological, and social existence, is able to create the ultimate culture, a culture which is all-empowering for an individual to lead a positive life, and keep out all that is destructive and negative, physically, psychologically, and socially. If we look at the human life cycle, we realize that the responsibility of parents to take care of a child to respect, nourish, and nurture the new life is a dictate of the culture of a society. As the child grows and comes out of the parents' shelter and gets exposed to the outside world, it is the responsibility of the society to provide a healthy environment for their growth into complete personalities. It is possible for an individual to take care and pass on the right values to the next generation and ensure that the wheel of life progresses smoothly only after becoming the complete personality. In essence, culture is tightly woven into the social fabric and is worn daily. Traditionally, the knitting of the social fabric has been tight and rich in color and design, with full attention given to every strand of thread and the weave. However, the gap between each thread has been increasing with time, leading to cultural dilution and diminishing values, and unnecessarily exposing what is personal and sacred. Cultural dilution occurs due to an imbalance in human psychology and the overpowering of the positive thought forces that sustain cultural processes by the negative traits of love and lust, anger, greed, attachment, power, and ego. Cultural dilution leads to cultural disintegration, where culture is not able to preserve the community as one cohesive working unit. Cultural disintegration leads to cultural negativities wherein culture and all those who follow it are seen as antithesis, to development and harmony. Cultural negativity leads to cultural damage in the form of terrorism, people negatively influencing others, for example through drugs, crime, etc. There is a visible downward spiral from cultural diversity to deviation, to dilution, to disintegrity, to negativity and subsequent damage. It is important to put a stop to this downward spiral of cultural values in order to protect society from decay. The powerful negative forces within the society need to be neutralized and eliminated. We need to give value to and revitalize each and every culture prevalent in the society, whether it is demarcated by time, such as ancient culture, modern culture, etc., or geographical locations such as Asian culture, African culture, European culture, etc., or the socio-economic or historical developments such as political culture, corporate culture, educational culture, etc. Today things are at the lowest, culturally. Human greed and expectation without working towards achieving the same has become an integral part of the modern culture. In the ancient culture there was a beautiful and sacred balance in relationships within and outside the family, and these relationships were deep. There was a sense of belonging and oneness in relationships without their becoming overbearing. People did not easily pass judgment on others. There was more tolerance towards each other in the society. The diminishing cultural values have a direct negative bearing on the society in the form of terrorism, drug abuse, HIV/AIDS, road rage, etc. If this decay is not prevented, it is going to irretrievably damage our society. It is important to redeem our cultural values to bring about an ultimate human culture. Culture is deteriorating in the modern society due to a lack of understanding of its importance and immense value. This is reflected in the physical appearance, conduct, attitude, etc. of the young generation, and it has happened because somewhere the family and the society has failed in its responsibility to guide the young generation properly to create a balance between the old and the new. Hence, they were not able to bring about the required cultural changes rooted in tradition. The young generation, to a large extent, sees culture as regressive, something that holds or binds them, and hence there is a need for cultural invention, which is translated into an urgency to rebel and break free. Cultural invention has come to mean any innovation that is new and found to be useful to a group of people and expressed in their behavior, but which does not exist as a physical object. Humanity is in a global, accelerating culture change period, driven by the expansion of international commerce, the mass media, and above all, the human population explosion, among other factors. Cultures are internally affected by both forces encouraging change and forces resisting change. Cultures are externally affected by a contact between societies, which may also produce or inhibit social shifts and changes in cultural practices. War or competition over resources may impact technological development or social dynamics. Additionally, cultural ideas may transfer from one society to another through diffusion or acculturation. In diffusion, the form of something, though not necessarily its meaning, moves from one culture to another. For example, hamburgers, mundane in the United States, seemed exotic when introduced into India, and the young generation pounds onto them. Acculturation has different meanings, but in this context refers to replacement of the traits of one culture with those of another, such has happened to certain Native American tribes and to many indigenous peoples across the globe during the process of colonization. Cultural changes are important and sometimes necessary and practical to adopt, but these changes should stem out of one's own culture and values. It is important for every individual to understand the difference between change and decay. If a tree is completely uprooted, exposed, and then planted at a different location, there is only a remote chance for its survival. Similarly, if an individual completely breaks away from his cultural tree, there is an immense possibility of his decay and very little hope of his progress. Hence, it is essential that the roots should remain firm and deep, and the branching out should only be for the upward or forward movement. If the roots are strong and deep, the external forces will not be able to sway an individual easily. The individual will be able to stand firm and be able to adapt to these external forces, whether positive or negative, and continue to grow. For example, if the cultural and family values given to a child in his formative years are strong enough, he will easily be able to say no to drugs or other destructive habits when he faces peer pressure, away from the family's protection. On the other hand, it is easier for an individual to get swayed by peer pressure if he does not have a strong value system to fall back upon and guide him. The practicality of change can be seen in the attires of various cultures over a period of time. For example, an Indian woman perhaps started wearing Western outfits instead of the more traditional sari because it was more practical and easy to handle. Similarly, the change from a joint family to a nuclear family could be due to various practical reasons. However, it is important that these changes do not reflect a decay of cultural values. Hence, the new attire, adopted in place of a sari, should be able to retain the grace and sacredness of womanhood, and the nuclear family should be able to ensure that relationships are not disrespected and do not get strained. When a river starts its journey from the mountains and flows through various terrains to reach the plains, it may go through various changes, but it should not be polluted because it is the lifeline for human civilization that benefits from its flow. It needs to be protected at any cost. Similarly, culture should also be able to flow like a river, changing for various practical, lifestyle, environmental, social, or political reasons, but it should not be corrupted, and the inherent values attached to the culture should be protected in order to sustain it for future generations. That is the responsibility of every individual belonging to any generation. Every individual needs to keep aside petty differences and come together with humanity for a higher cause and for the sake of the future generations. Irritation gives rise to oyster pearls, since it endures that irritation. We need to endure the small issues we face, to gradually overcome them and become powerful. Our minds are weak, and so are our bodies. All problems faced by individuals in the society are due to imbalances in the physical, psychological, or social dimensions. It is important that every individual strengthens his minds with the proper understanding of cultural values, as these values nourish the mind with thousands of years of wisdom, a wisdom that nothing else can give. Every individual should be able to strive and assimilate all that is positive from his own culture as well as other cultures through strong and analytical thought processes. This is possible only through the process of ultimate rehabilitation, a process by which all three dimensions, physical, psychological, and social, are treated and enhanced simultaneously. It is important to exercise our body and take good food so as to be physically and psychologically strong and become powerful pillars of society. Further, it is important to be mentally and emotionally strong and gain social strength. By working on the physical, psychological, and social dimensions simultaneously, the individual grows to become a complete personality. When an individual becomes a complete personality with positive habits, practices, and values, he gains the power to drive and direct hundreds around him to become complete personalities. He is able to contribute towards the strengthening of the community and its value system. With time, the freshly regenerated processes are able to create a new human culture. When many follow the path towards becoming complete personalities, this human culture takes root in society and grows and evolves as the ultimate culture, one that is physically solid, psychologically stable, and socially productive. In the ultimate culture, every individual is able to realize himself and his duty and work towards guiding others in this ultimate path.